Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. I will keep this intro short. I spent most of the day sitting but outside in a car of the vets. Ever since our other cat, Prem, passed away about a month ago, we've been paranoid about his brother, same age, so we're like, let's go and get him checked out just to make sure everything is okay inside. We went to MASH, the vet hospital here. The internist that treated Prem works there, and he was very good. So literally spent, I would say, 4 hours in a hot car just waiting because they were backed up. So, yes, short, but substantive, because today's guest is wonderful. This is Lindsay Olson. If you don't know who Lindsay is, I'm going to read you her bio right now. Originally from San Diego, musician Lindsay Olson, a.k.a. Salami Rose Joe Louis, worked in the sciences as a lab tech and made music on the side until Flying Lotus's label, Brainfeeder, released her third album, Zdenka 2080, in 2019, which gave her the courage to pursue music professionally. This was followed up by chapters of Zdenka the next year, and her most recent, Acoustmaticus, I hope I pronounced that correctly, was released in May, and it's great. I heard it, and it was what made me want to talk to Lindsay. And she's just the nicest. It's just a very pleasant conversation between two weird people, her and myself, and we delve into that, what made her weird. Probably part of it was listening to Captain Beefheart when she was a kid, but we get into a lot of other stuff that's pretty interesting. So I hope you like this one. And if you do, why not check out other episodes of the show? I've been doing this for 13 years. I have hundreds of episodes with writers and performers and comedians and actors and thinkers. So why not just jump into the back catalog? I mean, just recent interviews. Carl Newman from New Pornographers was really great. Jazz folks like Rob Mazurek and Zena Parkins, they've been on. Those are really cool talks. Bobcat Goldthwait, that was fun. So check those out. If you like what you hear, why not subscribe to the show? You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram, and I guess now Blue Sky, where I'm purely just writing jokes, which is all I ever wanted to do on these apps. At Andy Beckerman. Coming up, a lot of very cool episodes. Jad Fair, Teenage Fan Club, Matt Crispin from Chapo Trap House, and a lot more. We're on our way to episode 600, folks. Episode 600. So stay tuned for all of those. But for now, let's talk to Lindsay. To start this off, by the way, on a negative note, but while you were getting your headphones, I looked at Twitter and I saw that Taylor Swift and Matt Healy have broken up. So I hope that doesn't plunge you into any kind of despair to hear that.
I am sorry to hear that. I think I'll be okay, but are you going to be okay?
I don't know. It's living in dystopia. The minute you hear any bit of bad news, it just, I'm just holding on to the cliff for dear life. And now that I know that...
Yeah, it's hard. It's going to be hard. This interview will be challenging for the both of us, working through these feelings.
Here's a question, though. I mean, that was a joke, but I am curious because I don't feel out of place as an adult not getting pop culture. Because as a kid, I was never part of it. Whenever people were listening to whatever was popular, when I was a child, I listened to the Monkees and Weird Al. So I was never on the cutting edge of pop culture.
Yes.
Were you? So also, I'm assuming that as an adult making the music you like, you're not listening to Taylor Swift, but that may not be true. But...
Well, yes, as a child, I definitely was listening to some, not pop culture stuff. I felt like I was deep into, actually, it's funny, I was just re-listened to some of my favorite records as a kid, but I was deep into Captain Beefheart
Okay.
and Frank Zappa. Those are my two sort of childhood loves. But yeah, I almost felt like a curmudgeon a little bit as a child, where I was like, oh, I only like things from the 70s. And but as I've gotten older, I've gotten like, I really love contemporary music, but I can respect top 40 from like the production standpoint. It's really fascinating. Like top 40 music is so well produced. And I think on that side of things, like my brain is always like, wow, how do they place all of these frequencies like so perfectly? And like, it's a really interesting and like beautiful art form in that sense. But I think it doesn't move me in the same way that a lot of underground music does.
Does it move you at all? Because I find myself, and when I was a teenager, I would have been like, it sucks. Like as an adult, I'm more like, it's not for me. But it also it doesn't emotionally affect me at all in any way. Yeah. Like the emotions that it is supposed to elicit or that it's describing, whatever it is. It could be Taylor Swift or Ariana Grande, whatever it is. It doesn't. Yeah. I find the emotions to be so broad and unnuanced that it doesn't get to me in any way. And
I feel you. I will say sometimes certain music that is produced in a way that feels like it's feeding into the algorithm, it makes me really uncomfortable. Like it elicits an emotion, but it's like an emotion of like, oh, I don't know. Like it's kind of like, what is the motive for this music? What are you trying to do? And it makes me a little uncomfortable, if I'm being so honest.
Yeah, I wonder if it's with that question. Like, you could imagine, I don't know. And not that I'm saying that it was that, well, maybe it was better. Sorry, I stopped myself in the middle of talking because I'm like, well, I was like, well, it was better in the 80s or in the 60s when like Carole King was writing songs for people or something like that. Yeah. And there was a human being. No, I will say it was better. There was at least a human being behind it who wanted to, was like, okay, this is something that I'm feeling now, and I'm gonna try. And I think it's there in the atmosphere, in the zeitgeist, and I'm gonna try to tap into that. Versus something now where when you do say the algorithm, I'm like, well, it is this like dead husk of an idea that people try to figure out what the programmer wanted to do in order to make it rise in whatever it is, whether it's Spotify or TikTok or something like that. And that's not the zeitgeist anymore. That's just some like shithead in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. No, for sure. No, I do think like spiritually you can tell if a song has been crafted for like capitalist purposes. I don't know. And it makes me uncomfortable. But I do think that the artists themselves, like, they have real, like, art in them and real good intentions. But I think once you get to that level of, like, celebrity and fame, there's a lot of other, like, pieces to the puzzle that sort of craft this perfect kind of money-making, just, strategy. I don't know. But
I mean, have you ever been close to any of those people? Like, I don't mean personally close, like maybe friends, but even up close, I've had glimpses living in Los Angeles. I've had glimpses of those kind of people, and they actually seem like husks.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know. I don't think I've ever interacted with someone of that, like, sort of stratospheric celebrity. Yeah, so I can't speak on it, but it does seem like really isolating. I think it's hard when there's a lot of people having ideas about who you are, and also like a lot of eyes on you, and also like a lot of like you're responsible for a lot of people's livelihoods too. So that's a big responsibility as well. So it just seems really stressful to be at that level.
It is. It doesn't seem pleasant at all.
Yeah.
You know, it's never going to be a problem for me. But, you know, my wife is an actor and a stand-up, and it could be a problem for her at some point.
Yeah.
And we've kind of just been observing. We've been here in Los Angeles for 6 years and just like, okay, what is the level where where it helps you to be like, what's the level of power where you can get the things you want done, but you don't have to hollow yourself out.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a line.
I think so. One thing I've been trying to focus on is like, because I think it's easy to get caught up in like administrative stuff as an artist. Like there's so many like kind of, I don't know how to put it except to say administrative stuff, but like just remembering to center the music and focus on like the actual art itself, because I constantly need to remind myself that. But when I'm like authentically centering the music, that's when I feel the most like spiritually grounded. But it's tricky. It's such a weird career to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not asking these questions just to be like, so what do you think of Beyonce? Like, it's not anything that. I am curious about people like myself. I mean, part of this is just pure narcissism where I'm trying to figure myself out. But why did I want to? And really the question is, why did you want to make the music you want to make? I'm not asking you this specific question, by the way. We'll figure this out as we talk. Why did you want to make this, as opposed to saying like, okay, I want to be a pop star, or I want to do whatever. I want to be in the 1975. Is that what's Matt Healy? Again, this is music I don't really listen to. Whatever. I would rather make this, and maybe they make authentic music to them. Maybe they are kind of broad, hollow people, and there isn't much to them, and so it is authentic to them. So okay, I know that was partly a read as well as okay, they're just themselves.
Yeah.
But what are the things that push you off into making the music that you personally want to make versus like wanting to be a pop star is a different thing than wanting to make authentic music, because the pop stars have not millions. Pop stars have dozens of people writing their songs for them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess like one way I've been really lucky and able to make the music I want to make is that for the most part, I've been producing and writing and like doing everything by myself. So I kind of can just get as weird as I want, and no one's there being like, I don't know. So that, and I'm really fortunate that the label I'm on has been so down with like everything I've made. They haven't asked me to change anything. So I feel really fortunate in that sense. I've been given this great gift of like being encouraged to just do whatever speaks to me. And I sorry.
No, I was going to say, but there's no internal censor that's like, this is like, sometimes I will have an internal censor that goes, oh, this is too weird what I'm writing. And it's not going to connect to a larger, it will connect to like a very niche audience maybe, but it definitely won't, it's too weird.
I think because for me, I've always just loved really weird music. Like weird is like the goal. Weird is the pinnacle. Like I really hope to make something that sounds different. That's always my like goal. And I think I've just gotten very lucky that it's that people have been cool with it. But I actually, when I dropped my first album, I wasn't a musician like full time, and it was just for fun. And I think that was like a really important experience, because I try to hang on to that. Like, I'm doing this just because I love it and not like for any motivation other than that, which is hard to maintain when now that music is my source of income. Like it's a totally different like world, but I do like, I think in the past couple of years, I realized if it comes between sacrificing my love for something and doing things that don't feel authentic versus getting a day job, I think I'll just get a day job.
Okay.
But that's where I'm at personally. Like, I know that's like
great.
Everyone has like a different like relationship with these things. And I don't mean to say one way is better than the other. I think that I just realized that works for me because I'm so emotionally connected to music that when I've done things that haven't felt authentic, I just get really depressed.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I have a friend who's a writer, and she was saying, she was on another podcast I did with my wife, that she's not going to let a showrunner yell at her about a character that he just made up one day in line at Starbucks. She's like,
yeah,
I used to work at Starbucks. I'll go back and work there. I don't need this. I don't need you screaming at me about something that you just made up. That it's not worth it.
Yeah, totally.
But you also have, okay, there's a couple things I want to ask about. I was going to say, you also have a background in science. I got to ask, were you a scientist, like an actual, like, I'm designing experiments scientist, or taking data, or were you just working in the sciences?
Yeah, I don't think I can call myself a scientist. I got a degree in science, and then I went and worked in labs with the idea that I would go on to become like I was studying under after college, I was studying under a professor and working in labs, like with the idea that maybe one day I would become like a scientist that gets to design experiments. But I was only ever at the lab tech sort of stage. And I don't know. I just feel like I can't call myself a scientist. I don't know.
No, but that's better. I was trying to figure out in my head, because I only could find a limited amount of information about you online. And I was like, Naomi and I, my wife, were watching Love is Blind, I think. And the one guy on it, it's terrible. We were just doing it to make fun of the people. And the one guy called himself a scientist. And I was like, really? Because you look like a dope. And I looked him up online, and he was like a policy. He had gotten a bachelor's in science, but he was a policy wonk at some company that was I assumed that from the way it looked, it was like he was working with their lobbyists to figure out how to skirt some kind of environmental laws or something like that. Yeah, and I didn't think that was you, but lab tech, you're working. That's science. You're not. You're maybe not designing the experiments, but it's science.
Yeah. I definitely, science was a big part of my life, but I think sometimes I sort of get a little squeamish when people call me a scientist, because I'm like, I was definitely making like $12 an hour, cutting up samples, and not like, I wasn't like a big time scientist.
Sure. But you're not like, okay, so you're not maybe designing the experiment, but you are working. I mean, that's still science. Sure.
Yeah. I loved, like, in school, when I got my degree, like, I always loved science, and it was a really big part of my childhood too. Like, I was always into math and science, and I think that's why I was such a late bloomer with music, because math and science was kind of a big part of my life. I was in the, what's it called? Was it the math club? Math Olympics? I was just really into it. But I haven't done it in so long that I also, another reason I feel a little squeamish talking about it is I feel like I've forgotten almost everything. Like it's really scary how much I've forgotten about that chapter of my life since I've been so focused on music. But
you can pick it back up. Hypothesis, you test it.
Yeah, totally.
Someone else tests it. That's it. Not much more. No, I was I don't know. I don't know how to actually talk about it. I was going to be a physicist. And then nice. I got into philosophy, and I became a philosophy professor. All I wanted to do was this anyway, was comedy and writing. Wow, cool. But I came from a kind of like pretty solid middle class background, so it seemed like a fantasy. I mean, it was existentially closed off to me because I didn't even think of it as a possibility until later on.
Yeah, for sure.
But I studied philosophy of science, and I taught philosophy of science.
That's so cool. Wow. So like philosophy of science. Wow. That's really neat. What does that get into?
It could be anything from how our experiments designed and how in the designing of those experiments does it preclude, is that the word I'm looking for, certain possibilities in the experimental design, and how do you know if you're testing for a hypothesis, it's not just cut and dry. You don't just do X and you're like, oh, okay, now we're figured it out, or we didn't figure it out. It is you have to really sit there and think through how do you get the results, period, not even the results you want, but just the results, period, and like minimize the other kinds of factors. So it can be something like very focused like that, all the way to the social and political structures that guide science in certain directions.
Ooh, have you ever read any Karen Barad?
No, I know the name. I think a lot of the stuff that I was doing was Bruno Latour.
Okay. Because I took this amazing class with them that was like feminism in science, but it was like all about like unconditional bias and like kind of how the double slit experiment proves that everything's like entangled and that we're all queer and stuff. It was such a sick class. It was so cool.
That's really interesting.
But they're really brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I was trying to think of like a very easy. Oh, for example, like talking about the algorithm. The algorithm is programmed by someone, probably a cishet white dude in Silicon Valley somewhere. The as if there's one, but like whatever you're talking about,
sure.
right? Whether it's Spotify or something like that, and they build biases into it.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
And that affects everything. And we think that these things are neutral in some way, but they're not.
Right. That's really interesting. One thing that kind of like freaked me out a little bit in the science world was how it's kind of like I have the same problem in journalism where like you're looking for a story and you're looking for interesting results, and that bias does affect your research and your data and the way you read things. And it doesn't feel like you can be this completely like neutral character when you want to have a good paper and you're trying to like climb academia. Yeah. It just felt very, I don't know, felt weird.
Yeah, that was the thing that I ran into in philosophy. It's not about the production of good philosophical works. It's about getting accolades and awards and tenure and getting more money so you can afford a summer home and those kinds of things. Yeah. As much as it is about, I don't want to like, it's not everyone, obviously. There are still people who are just doing philosophy because they love it and they think there's something worthwhile. But there's a lot of people who are like, well, if I just clap back to Socrates' critics in this way, whatever. Yeah. Basically, it's like Socrates says X, and then there's a history of literature responding to whatever X is back and forth. And then you just find who the last person is, and you take a position opposite them or explaining them in a more nuanced way or something like that. And that's it. And it's intellectually dead in many ways.
Yeah, for sure. That's very interesting. Wow. Yeah, I guess it's like kind of relates to what we were talking about with music too, where it's like if you're focused on climbing and like success and financial gain, your stuff is going to become more and more hollow. But how do you like preserve that integrity and like genuine character when you're making music? Yeah, it's tricky.
How?
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think that is one thing that's so beautiful about music is like when it is authentic, it's just so infectious and it can't be stopped. Like anytime someone has done something different, they tend to become actually really popular because they're doing something authentic and different. And I think in like throughout history, that music, like it's kind of unstoppable, you know?
I mean, I have a couple different questions about this, but let me just ask, what is it about something being authentic that means something to you? Because it could be that you could be like, well, no, I'd rather have fame or I'd rather have notoriety or something, right? Other than wanting to make music that means something to you. So what is it about, but outside of you said earlier that like when you make something that is inauthentic, it's actually depressing, which I understand.
I guess it's like how one quantifies the meaning of life. But like, honestly, like I think, you know, you can on paper have everything, but be really miserable. And there truly is nothing in my life. I've never experienced more joy than playing music and that feels authentic with others and feeling that connection, like between other humans. Cause I feel like I spend so much of my life feeling so lonely, and there's something so magical about like real human connection. It's like the most magical thing. And I think music, like, when you're really feeling it and it's authentic and you're communicating with others, you're just like, you're connected, and it's just magic. I don't know. I've never felt a better feeling.
Did you grow up looking for that connection?
I think I grew up feeling that from listening to music, like listening to certain songs and feeling like, wow, I feel so understood for the first time in my life. Or like I feel so connected to someone else's like emotional experience. And like it's really nice, because I would say I'm definitely an introvert, and like social things have always been hard for me. Like, especially as a kid, I was really shy and bullied a lot and stuff. And I think it's like having that connection is so huge. Yeah.
Did you grow up in San Diego?
Yeah.
That's kind of a military town.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty conservative. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I think I was just too weird for people. But that's fine.
Yeah. I don't know much about it. I have a friend that lives down there who works in the arts. He's a comic book colorist. And
oh, cool.
And so whenever I visited him, I don't ever get the conservative side because we never go in there. But everything I've ever heard about San Diego is that it is fairly right wing.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is. I mean, it's complicated too, because it's like also a border town, which is really special. Like, you get a lot of culture from the proximity to Mexico is really cool. But yeah, it's an interesting place. It's so beautiful, and I really appreciated actually kind of being an outsider, because I felt like there's like something really beautiful that happens when you're an outsider and you have outsider friends. You form like a really strong bond, and there's something kind of fun about being like the weirdos of a school. I don't know. And it also has taught me that like I never want to be cool, because I really don't like when people, or that's a weird way to say that. I don't like when people form cool kids clubs and exclude other people. I find that like really a big turnoff. And so like, I just want like everyone to be accepted at a show and like loved, and like there to be no kind of like cool kids vibes or anything. I really don't like that. So that's something I think is helpful in music, because I don't know, there's always cool kids clubs.
Did your parents let you? Okay, I guess there could be a couple different ways that this happened. Did they nurture your, let's just say, weirdness, or did they just let you be, or were they an oppositional force?
Interesting. I think they worked a lot. So I definitely had a lot of alone time, which was cool.
Only child?
No, I have an older sister.
Okay.
And I think they were very like supportive of my weirdness as a kid. Like, I think they were into it actually, which is, I'm really grateful for. But as far as music goes, they were very much against me playing music as a career, like very much against it. So that felt like a really long challenge. And it's probably why I actually got a degree in science and went that route, because it didn't really feel like an option, just because I didn't want to disappoint them so much.
Yep, familiar. Did you form the actual existential want, I want to make music and I want to try to do this for a living, and then they were against that? Or were you kind of like, oh, well, I like making this and I'll just do it around the edges, and they were still kind of against you even doing that?
I think when I brought up that I wanted to pursue it, there was a very strong, hard wall of no. But so it took me a long time. I kind of sort of put on this show that I would be doing science, and while I was always making music too. But luckily now, like after some years, like they're really cool with it now and supportive. I know they still like worry so much about the financial longevity.
Sure.
But I think we've come to a good place, but it sort of took a long time to get there, and a lot of like, yeah.
How hard was that? No. Was that like, you are not, was that this absolute kind of like, no daughter of mine is going to go into music? Or was it more like, what are you, crazy? Like that kind of like Jewish anxiety? No, or
it was a hard no.
Okay.
I can put it to you like this. I did hospice for my grandpa, and a couple days before he passed, and I love that man so much. He was one of my favorite people. But he was like, he has a thick Slovakian accent, and he was like, Lindsay, when are you going to go to medical school? It's just like, that is just the number one thing I've heard my whole life. But my mom immigrated, and I think, like financial, with their life, I mean, they're Jewish and they were in the war in Europe. And I think there's just been so much having to pack up and move and start again that like financial security is like number one. And I totally get it. And I think growing up in this country and like growing up with all of their hard work, creating a financially like secure home, like I had a totally different experience of life. So I think it's just been a tricky thing to navigate, trying to be respectful of all the work they've put in and what makes them comfortable, but also trying to do what I love.
Yeah. 100% familiar. How did they end up in San Diego?
So my grandparents, after the war, they got into science, but then they were in Czechoslovakia, and they illegally defected during the communist regime. And then they got wind that there might be some work at UCSD in San Diego. And so they got a job there, and that brought them out to the States. And then just sort of, a lot of my family works at that university, and that was how they ended up there.
Were they teaching, or were they working in whatever?
Teaching and working in labs. Yeah, a combination.
Do you know what they were actually studying?
My grandpa did intravenous cardiovascular stuff. So like working with the Doppler effect to try to measure like heart flow and stuff like that. And then my grandma worked with, I don't remember, something, I think with the Pavlovian response I think I should know.
So medical, the medical and psychological areas? I don't know how to exactly characterize it, but
totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were really special people. Like my grandma she was so cool. She was like, she became an orphan before the war, unfortunately, and then was in the Holocaust and like survived, and then went to school, became a scientist, then became a race car driver.
Wait, what? Sorry, okay. Was she actually in one of the camps?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, she was like such a strong incredible woman. She was so funny too, like one of the funniest people I've ever met. She was just so cool, like such an inspiration. She wrote this memoir that literally was called How I Became a Living Legend. It was awesome.
How did she become a race car driver?
So she had like kind of a punk rock attitude, I think, in a lot of ways. And in communist Czechoslovakia, the thing that she really didn't like is that you couldn't really, there wasn't as much freedom to do things. But for some reason, they had this like race car, or this car race that was like one of the only optional things. It was just like randomly like, you could do this car race or you could not. And so she got really into it, and she actually like won. And she won this like car race while she was pregnant.
Wow. I love the idea that like communist Czechoslovakia, like they're like, well, we got to give them something to do.
Yeah.
And somehow NASCAR was the
I don't know if it was NASCAR. I think it was like these little Fiats. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm pretty obsessed with her. She was a really cool lady. Yeah.
Have you thought about or tried to emulate her in any way? Or do you think going in the direction you've gone in is in some way because you wanted to be like her?
You know, it's interesting. That's a cool question. I think that, like, she was actually one of the few members of my family that was pretty supportive of me doing music. And I think she liked that I just did something because I believed in it. And I think that, like, she was just so tough, and she just, like, tried really hard to, like, do what she believed in. And I try to be like that. I think I can also be quite, like, a pushover and a very, like, weak in a lot of ways. So I'm trying to get more, like, firm about what I believe in and standing up for myself. But she's definitely an icon in that sense.
I mean, I really identify with where you are in that you're trying to navigate a lot of different desires, your own and your parents' desires, and in some way a kind of, let's just call it the algorithmic desire of society in some way that's in you. And so it's difficult when they're all not on the same page. And so
Sure.
So
yeah.
I don't know you obviously more than the last 40 minutes or so. So I would say be kind to yourself about saying you're a pushover, because it's difficult to have to navigate those things. To want to just be like, I'm myself and I want to kind of do the things I want, but I also have my parents and I have to make a living and all this other kind of stuff that is in your head.
Yeah, totally. It's tricky. Yeah. In a lot of ways, I feel really fortunate. Like, I've been given a lot of encouragement to just be myself, which is, I'm really grateful for. Like, I make pretty weird music, and I feel like I've gotten really lucky.
Well, what has allowed you to insulate yourself? If not insulate, then, because maybe it's not that, because you did give in certain ways to, your parents' wants. I mean, let me ask this first. When you got into science, when you wanted to study science, I have to assume, in the same way that it was for me, that it did excite you in some way. Yeah,
totally. I mean, I think that there's a similar thing that happens with science and in music, where, like, in the abstract world, it's, like, really magical and fascinating, and like they're both so beautiful. And I think that, like, if I could play science in the same way I've been playing music, I would totally do it. But there's a lot of, like, bureaucracy in science that it's harder to get to the point of being the creative scientist. I think that's a long road. You have to, like, do academia, you have to work for a while, and then you get to be creative, and it's a lot of work. Yeah. And you do have a lot of games you have to play, like grant writing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a long road. Whereas I feel like I got lucky where, like, I I just made some albums of weird stuff, and all of a sudden, like, it's just like got to do that.
Yeah, but it's really interesting that what excited you about science was the aesthetic aspect. I was into it because I had this. It's the same thing that led me to philosophy. I had this feeling of like, I want to know why this all is.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was more of an epistemological thing than an aesthetic thing. And I can appreciate the aesthetics on when I'm like faced with it. If I look up at the night sky or I'm in front of the ocean or something like that, that's when it hits me.
Interesting.
What was it about? Was it just a gut thing? Was it just an emotional reaction that the aesthetics appeal to you?
Interesting. I mean, I think, I don't know. Maybe I have a very strange brain where like I like just patterns and abstract stuff. And I just feel like kind of like giddy around that stuff. And like, I love like doing a big math equation and you're problem solving. Like, it's just like really fun. But I also feel you on like wanting to know why. Like, that's a big question in science too. And like, it's really interesting. But yeah, I think I was more into, like, my favorite subject was honestly organic chemistry because it's like all just like patterns and puzzles and stuff like that, which to me, that's what music feels like in a way. It's just like you're making these different patterns and they just like fit together, and it feels very like intuitive and dancing or something. Not really like, I can't really put a finger on it.
It's like, I mean, for me, let me see if this works for you. When I listen to, say, like minimalist compositions, my brain has a tough time it's constantly engaged when I'm listening to a piece, whatever it is. I don't know, Steve Reich or something like that. It's constantly trying to grab onto it, and there's never a moment. The pleasure is in trying to figure out that thing. And I wonder if there is something similar for you.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it. I've been doing a lot of remixes lately, and I truly have felt like it's like a puzzle. I'm like, because I try a bunch of different iterations, and then I'm like, what is the right way to flip this? Like, it's like a puzzle, and then finally it clicks, and I'm like, oh, and it's like, yeah, that's interesting. I love that. Yeah, I love puzzles.
When you approach a remix, I've always wondered this because it's never been something that I've ever engaged in, and I'm kind of like, oh, a remix, okay. When you're trying to figure it out, what is it that when you listen to a piece of music and you're like, okay, I'm going to do something different with this.
Yeah.
What is it that's going on in your head as you're trying to do that? Because it's so foreign to me.
To me, it's a lot of just trial and error, like just trying things. And is that what you're asking? Like how I
honestly don't. Because I can, as I was saying that, I thought about, oh, well, I can take culture and I know how to make it funny. I know how to like, oh, this thing is dumb. Yeah. I'm going to recut it so that it's funny. Or I'm going to change the angle on something so that it's funny.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, the main thing I do, I feel like in remixes is like isolate some melodic element and then reharmonize it, because I love like reharmonizing things and adding, I'm obsessed with chords. So like adding different chords beneath it and then adding different textures, just kind of like putting my own spin on it, is so fun. But yeah, I would say that's like the main thing that I do in a remix. And I know remixes traditionally, it's all about like changing the beat, which I do too. But like, I feel like I'm such a chord nut. I like to just reharm everything.
When you were a kid, what prevented you from giving up your weirdness and just joining in with what everyone else was doing at the time?
Oh, I mean, probably a couple things. One was like I got into this program that, for better for worse, isolated the kids in the program away from the rest of the school. So we actually like ate our lunch in the classroom because we were so scared of getting bullied.
Oh no.
But it was like we were just like, it was like some kind of like you had to test into it, and I feel like it's kind of probably really detrimental for kids to have that kind of like program where that separates you from the rest of the school. But yeah, so that was a big factor in just kind of staying isolated in the quote unquote, I don't know, nerds, which is an awesome zone to be in, honestly. And like being inspired by like people who are authentically themselves, like just like obsessed with whatever they're obsessed with.
Was there a particular person or people?
Yeah, I feel like a couple of my best friends were like sort of unwavered and unaffected by bullying in such a beautiful way. I definitely like, I think if I'm being honest, like I totally wanted to be cool. It was just like something I don't think I could ever achieve.
Sure.
But like I was definitely affected by bullying. But I had some friends that just did their thing, and it was so beautiful and like inspiring to be around. And yeah, I guess the other factor was like, I think because I was so shy and I don't know, maybe didn't dress right and just kind of, I think I had a rolly backpack and I wore a uniform even though it wasn't required. Just like I did all the wrong things.
Okay, but you could. This is why I asked this question. You could have said, "Well, I want to be like them." So, what is that person wearing? Okay, I'm gonna go to Forever 21. I don't know where people shop for cool Hot Topic. I don't know where you go for cool clothing. You're like, I'm gonna do that. You could have, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, maybe it just never crossed my mind. I don't know. I really, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting question.
Because plenty of people live inauthentic lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much pressure to just be, like, when you're a kid, like, there's just so much pressure to fit in, and I totally get it. It's what we're sort of conditioned to do, and I think I just maybe was really bad at it, which I'm grateful for.
That's actually...
I definitely, like, I wanted to be cool.
No, I really love that, because I think that actually is, for a lot of people, the only way I could be, at that you say that, I was like, oh yeah, I was just bad at trying to be cool.
Yeah.
And so if I wonder if I had been better at it, then maybe I would have ended up living an inauthentic life, because I would have been like, well, it's rewarding me. I'm hanging out with the cool kids.
No, I'm so grateful for it, because I think it's like, it really has made me so aware of when people are playing that game and trying to feel like leave people out. And that is just something I really reject. Like, everyone needs to be included, and no one needs to be made to feel like they're not good enough for a setting. Mm-hmm. So it's something I really value from that time. Is like,
yeah. What was the name of that program that you were in?
Oh, it's called Seminar.
Did it stand for something, or was it just?
I don't know.
Because that's very California. I'm part of the Seminar.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
like Landmark Forum or some kind of like weird 70s screamy cult type thing.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. The school system is so weird.
Yeah, no, it is. I was in the gift. They called it the Gifted program, just in quotes. Okay. The Gifted program.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Like, it was probably just that. Just some program you test into and just kind of are with the same people. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it was based on an IQ test I took when I was in, I think, first grade, which is insane.
No, honestly, like, that's why it's so weird. It's like, I took it when I was 7, and it was like, I remember it's just all puzzles, and I love puzzles. So suddenly I'm like in this thing because I love puzzles.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Yeah.
If your brain formed in such a way that there are certain, I was going to say trials, as if this was like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Yeah. There are just certain things that happens to be good at when it comes to, I think, manipulating shapes and things like that.
Yeah.
Then whereas there were probably tons of creatively interesting people that never got to go into any of these programs.
No, it's so tragic, honestly. Like, I really reject it. And also, like, just the, like, ways it messes with kids' heads. Like, somehow now all of a sudden, like, my whole family thinks I'm the smart one of the family, which is totally not true. Like, in general, like, I do not feel smart, and they're just like, just the ways it got in like everybody's heads, like, and the kids that don't test in somehow feel like they're not smart, and it's horrible.
Did it create a unending void of need for approval in you, like it did for me?
I mean, I definitely just, all I've ever wanted is my parents to be proud of me.
Yep. And then constantly seeking it out in other areas. Like,
totally,
I got a good review, so that'll fill it in. Nope, it didn't do it. All right, maybe another review will do it. Nope, that's not doing it. All right, I'm going to keep looking for new avenues for that approval.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, but, that's that's so interesting. Yeah.
Do you remember what appealed to you about Captain Beefheart when you were a kid? And also, what age are you listening to Captain Beefheart?
I think the first time I got into him, I was 13. And I loved the, like, there's, like, a lot of, like, xylophone and just, like, really weird, like, arrangements. And it was just so weird. And I couldn't put a finger on, like, what was so... I just imagined that him and his band lived in this, like, really weird house, and it was just so, like, cinematic. I just, like, couldn't even place what it sounded like. And I think I really loved that, the feeling that it gave me. And I also, this is kind of a secret, but I guess this is a podcast, so now it's not a secret, but I loved playing harmonica, and he was such a ripper on the harmonica. So, but I don't know. Yeah, for some reason. Also, I think sometimes if you're a kid, and I remember my friend gave me, like, his whole discography on however we used to transfer music back in the day, which is crazy because that was, like, a long time ago.
What year is this?
Let's see, I'm 32. I graduated high school 2008, so maybe 2003?
CDRs.
CDRs? Okay. CDRs. Cool. Yeah.
You've also been a MP3 CDR, so you could have had the whole thing in MP3 on one.
It was something like that. I remember somehow he put it on, like, our family's computer, and then I would burn CDs off of my family's computer.
Mm-hmm. I remember those times.
Yeah. But yeah, when you just, like, get someone's discography, and then you're like, that's just, like, the music you have, and it's in constant rotation on the Walkman, in between classes, on the way home from school.
Mm-hmm.
So it just became just my thing.
Yeah.
I just loved Beefheart.
Why were you saying that playing the harmonica was a secret? Is there... Because you seem pretty... I was going to say self-assured, but maybe I just mean that comfortable in your own skin.
Oh, I have a really complicated relationship with harmonica. I think that given the cultural context of, like, the blues, I have a lot of insecurity about playing, like, blues harmonica because I don't really feel like I'm not really sure how to, like, appropriately engage with playing the blues as a, like, privileged white person. And so I think that, like, even though I, like, really love that instrument, the only style I really know how to play is, like, the cross harp kind of bluesy style. So I just have, like, a kind of almost, like, I need to, like, sit with my relationship to harmonica and, like, kind of figure it out, if that makes sense.
Have you ever tried experimenting with it to work on different styles?
Yeah, I think that's what I want to do, is just try to, like, play it in a way that, like, fits with my style of music and stuff like that. Yeah.
Lindsay, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been so fun.
Have you done podcasts before?
Not really.
Ooh, okay. How's it feel? First podcast, how's it?
Or maybe I've done 2 before.
Third podcast, how does it feel?
Yeah. Feels great. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Very nice. Thanks. I really love your new album a lot.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Of course.
This was fun.
Of course. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.